What's up, everyone? This is Raphael Garcia with Roy Billington. Once again, it's June 8th, and we're here to talk about combat sports as usual. We're here with MMA Ratings.net, and we're going to go over, we had another good weekend, good solid weekend of MMA action and just sports in general. So we're going to start from the top, and just basically touch on everything that's going on in the sport and some of the news stories that came out from this week. How are you doing today, Roy?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good, man. I enjoyed the fights this weekend.
Okay, great. That's actually, where we're going to start because we had a pretty stacked weekend once again, and we're going to go off of the UFC Fight Night first, which was last night in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where Vincent Henderson he got a stoppage. Everybody's been complaining about him not stopping fights. Well, he got a pretty solid win last night when he stopped Ruslan Khabilov last night in the fourth round of their fight. What do you think about this fight?
Yeah, Benson Henderson often gets criticized for his lack of finishing fights, but to me, he's always been an exciting fighter to watch. Kabilov, I don't think personally was ready for the fight. Greg Jackson said himself that he thinks he could have done a few more fights before it. But Ben Henderson looked good, man. His boxing looked surprisingly better than usual, and his back take was pretty slick. That was a good submission. It was a good win for him. I'm hoping we see him against Nurmagomedov next.
Yeah, that's definitely the next fight I want to see. I felt like that should have been the fight that should have been made for tonight, but I'm not sure what stopped that. But Benson is he's in a tough spot at 155 because he's going to be a while before he gets another shot at Anthony Pettis. But I seriously think he can beat any lightweight in the weight class. Even though I would like to see him fight Josh Thompson again as well because I didn't agree with how that fight went down. But he can legit beat any fighter at 155 right now, except maybe Anthony Pettis, it seems. So he's in a very peculiar position, and it sounds like he definitely accepts the role that he's in right now while he waits to get another title shot. I just hope he doesn't get the John Fitch treatment where he continues to win all these bouts and doesn't get like another shot down the line.
Yeah, I agree. You made out the point about the Josh Thompson fight being a bad decision. Speaking of bad decisions, the co-main event last night was pretty crazy.
Oh man, see, when the fight finished, I immediately said that Ross Pearson should not be happy that this fight is going to the judges. There's no way on earth that those people sitting watching the fight didn't take into account the way that people were cheering wildly anytime Diego Sanchez did anything. While it shouldn't matter, it definitely played a part. Man, one judge had it 30-27 for Diego, which means that when he got dropped and almost finished in the second round, he still thought Diego did enough to win that round. Like, I don't understand where that comes from, but I'm not surprised. Like, this is MMA. We've seen this plenty of times. We've seen this at least four times with Diego. So I'm not even surprised in any way, shape, or form that that he won the fight the way he did. People were joking on Twitter where if this fight goes to 3 rounds, or excuse me, if this fight goes all 3 rounds, Ross Pearson's already lost. Well, that's exactly what happened. If I was someone who bet on fights, there's no way I would have bet money on Ross Pearson. I actually would have bet on Sanchez last night, and it would have paid off.
Yeah, man, it was crazy. I was watching fight. I fell asleep last night, but I caught the fight this morning. It was the first fight I clicked to watch because I'm a huge Diego Sanchez fan. I love his fights. But coming into the end of the third round, the thought that was going through my head is that Diego should retire. He was getting hit easily on the feet. He posed no real offense. And then when it went to the decision, I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. I can't see how any judge gives him that fight. Diego looked awful, and then even in post-fight interviews, he still was adamant that he won. I just couldn't believe it.
It was almost like it was definitely painful to listen to him during the post-fight speech as well too. It's just like I don't know why he's still doing this to himself, but that was definitely like a very bad situation. It was bad on the judges. It was bad on the commission down there who hires these judges. Like there's nothing positive that comes out of that. I hope Ross Pearson got paid his show and his win money last night because even though the judges gave it to Diego, Dana White knows he was very smart man. He's a very smart fight fan as well. He knows that there's no way on earth that Ross Pearson lost that fight last night.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I agree with you. Diego looked pretty bad. And what gets me about Diego is he's a very, very accomplished grappler, and he just neglects his grappling uh, and stands with guys. He's fighting against a British guy with no wrestling background. Diego has wrestled collegiately, and he's a great submission artist. I don't see why he doesn't try to bring that fight to the ground. It makes no sense. His fight IQ is really low.
I don't even know if it's that. I don't think it's the fact that he wants to, because he knows that putting on those type of fights, he has a better chance of winning. He has a better chance of winning than the decision side of it. And it's just the fact that he knows that those are the type of fights that the UFC wants to see. So they're keeping him around for as long as possible, which is exactly what they seem to be doing with him at this point in his career.
Yeah, man, it's just it's weird. You know, all the best fighters in the world fight to their skill advantage. Um, like I don't see why Sanchez, when he obviously has an advantage there, doesn't take the fight to the ground. Fights on the ground can be exciting, and Diego is always exciting in grappling exchanges. His fights with Nick Diaz and Kara Parisian were among his most exciting fights. So it really bothers me that he just doesn't like to grapple anymore.
You can definitely blame the mainstream fans for that.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
let's keep on going forward. And what did you think of John Dodson and John Moraga? That was the fight I was looking forward to the most last night, and it didn't disappoint at all. John Dodson he definitely looked like he was. I don't want to say slowing down, but he looked like he was getting off to a very slow start when the fight first started. He didn't do too much in the first and second rounds, and John Moraga was doing just enough to kind of stay in it. That kick that finished it, that kind of split John's face open, was pretty brutal, and the follow up was as well. But I wasn't. I'm not gonna say I wasn't too impressed with Dodson tonight, but I would definitely wanted to see more out of him.
Yeah, man, John Dodson's a pretty crazy athlete. He put on a good performance once more last night. He himself is in a tricky position in the flyweight division. Obviously, he's probably top four maybe now, but he's just recently been beaten by the champ. I think personally that he could move back up to bantamweight because obviously, as you said, he was slow on last night, which could relate to maybe cutting a bit too much weight. And at bantamweight, obviously, he has a knockout victory over the champion, so it would make a lot of sense.
Honestly, man, I was hoping last night that when Joe Rogan, or excuse me, John Anik put the mic in his face, that he was going to call out both TJ Dillashaw and Demetrius Johnson. I was hoping for him to do it so much, but obviously he didn't. I'm not sure why, but he has the potential of being the champion at both divisions, which is something that you kind of want to see. Not necessarily you kind of want to see, but those are the guys that are kind of most exciting at this point of MMA. So he's someone that I will continue to look forward to seeing next. I think he deserves another shot at the title, depending on who wins from Ali Bagatinov and Demetrius Johnson, who are facing off this weekend. So he's probably number two contender at flyweight behind Ali on my rankings. But it'll be interesting to see what the UFC does with him next. There aren't too many different options at 125.
Yeah, I really want to see him fight Joseph Benavidez. Put those two guys in there, and one will come out a contender again. Both of them have recently lost to the champ. Benavidez has lost twice to the champion, but they're probably the two best guys in the division that are not named Demetrius Johnson. So I see a fight between them two as probably the best way to determine which one can go for the title again in the future.
Who do you think wins that fight?
Joseph Benavidez is just a little bit too good, man. Uh, I think he's a better grappler, and his striking has come along a long way. I actually picked him to beat Mighty Mouse in the rematch. It's just a shame that it got stopped so early. I know he got knocked out. I would like to see how the fight would have played out. But obviously Mighty Mouse looked amazing in that fight. But I'd like to see Joseph Benavidez and Mighty Mouse go at it again.
I'm not exactly sure how I agree with you there because Joseph was out. Like after the first one hit him and he goes down, Mighty Mouse hits him at least 5 more times.
Oh no.
He wasn't even fast enough to get over to stop him.
Oh no, no,
He
no.
was definitely out.
I agree with that. I agree that he was knocked unconscious. What I meant to say was that I wish, in a sense, that the fight he hadn't got knocked out so early, as I would
Oh,
have
okay.
liked to see how the guys had matched up against each other skills wise. He was definitely out. He was out cold. It was a great shot by Demetrius Johnson.
How do you think Joseph would fare against John Dotson's power then?
I think he just take John Dodson down. I know John Dodson's really, 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 really good at not getting taken down, but I know Benavidez is such a strong grappler, and he showed it in his last performance. So I'd like to see that.
Okay, okay, I can definitely take that as an approach. Now, I wouldn't mind seeing Dotson and Joseph Benavidez fighting as well. I think that they would be definitely a good fight to start off like a pay-per-view main event with, have them open up the card. I think that would be a great way to get the fans excited because you know that they're not going to stop at all. So that's something I would like to see as well. I haven't written my fights to make piece, but I think that that's a good starting point there. So moving along, what do you think about Rafael Dos Anjos and Jason Hyde? I really like Dos Anjos. I like how he looked through this fight, and I feel like he did a good job of recovering. Even though Hyde got all of those slams in the first round, you can kind of tell that that approach was taking something out of Jason, and his gas tank just didn't look there once the second round started.
Yeah, Dos Anjos is a great fighter. He's won what? He won 6 in a row before he lost to Nurmagomedov. He's one of those guys that's just below title contention, and it's to be seen if he'll ever go past that. I think he put on a solid performance last night. Jason Hyde probably is feeling the effects of cutting down to lightweight for the first time. Um, his wrestling is great, and he's very explosive, but perhaps the cut was a little bit too much for him.
Honestly, coming into this fight, I wasn't too familiar with Hyde's past accolades, but he looked good early in the fight. He was getting the takedowns that he needed, and he looked like he was going to be able to use his wrestling to siphon Dos Anjos' jiu-jitsu. But once the second round started, you could tell that Raphael had the energy left that Jason Hyde didn't. Like even the way that they were standing when the second round started, and Raphael had to be told by the ref to back up. He looked like he was ready to fight, and Jason Hyde just wasn't. So I'm not too surprised with how this fight ended, especially with Dos Anjos' striking coming along when he landed that big shot and dropped Jason. Some of those shots after that landed to the back of the head, which was clear. With the two replays that they showed, they were definitely landing in the back of the head, but I don't think it was enough to really kind of not stop it the way the referee did at that point in time.
Yeah, I agree. I really don't see how Hyde is even making that weight. He competes in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a medium heavy, so it must be quite a cut down to lightweight. I guess it's probably detrimental to him, and we're kind of seeing the trend that TJ Dillashaw mentioned about the negative effects of weight cutting and why he credits his victory against Hennenbrau partly due to the fact that Hennenbrau cut so much weight that he can't keep up the speed of him. I think we should see more guys fighting toward their natural weight classes.
It's hard though, man, because like you have guys that kind of fluctuate right in the middle of weight classes, and it's tough for them to find a place where they're comfortable. Like everybody wants to point towards a Frankie Edgar example of someone who was fighting small at a weight class where they're smaller than everyone. But he is. I think he's more of an exception of the case. You got some guys who are legit naturally in between two weight classes, and it's tough to tell them to fight the higher weight class where they're already going to be smaller than everyone, but they still have that little bit of a struggle to get down to the lower weight class. Do you think that this is enough of a argument to create more weight classes in MMA?
I think, for me personally, what always devaluated boxing world titles is that there are so many world titles. There is so many different weight classes, and it's just not very fan friendly. Like when there's guys coming in boxing who are world title holders of 5 weight classes, and then there's guys like BJ Penn who's probably what in boxing terms 6 weight classes world champion. And he won 6 weight classes between welterweight and lightweight. It's just crazy. I personally don't see how the UFC could implement more weight classes, especially in the lower range, because right now there's not a whole lot of guys at 125 who are up to the caliber of the UFC and same going up. I think maybe I wouldn't mind seeing a 160-pound division. a 190-pound division and maybe a 220 division. But other than that, I've no real interest.
That's a good way to look at it. I personally, I don't think that they need any more weight classes. I think the fact that they have the ones that they do is what makes them so competitive. And I feel like with science coming along the way it is, there are better methods to take to cut weight. But like some athletes need to be more concerned about how they are cutting weight. Because if you see guys like Thiago Alves who look very good in his last weight cut, or guys like Ian McCall, he's another one who cuts a lot of weight to the lower weight classes, and they're able to do it consistently. It does have a negative effect on their health long term wise, but I feel like it's better than creating multiple weight classes if they want to kind of preserve the sport as it is today.
Yeah, recently there was a Muay Thai fight, a British Championship scheduled for Saturday night, and the main event of that between two champions from rival promotions had to be called off because of a weight cut. Whereas the reigning champion, his kidneys started to fail, and he was hospitalized the night before the fight. So there's obviously, I know your point is obviously that weight cuts should be made more educated, but in a grassroots sports like MMA or Muay Thai, where at the lower levels there isn't any expendable income to spend on nutritionists, the danger comes when there's guys of 19, 20 who have no money, they don't know what they're doing, and they're just not eating food to make weight, or they're dehydrating themselves overly, and then it comes a severe risk on health.
Yeah, that definitely is true. Like I said, it does become a health issue. Dan Cormier is an example of someone who had to deal with those health issues when he was cutting for the Olympic team years back. So it does become a problem. I think it's going to affect
The
a
thing
lot of
with
guys down the line. But I think there are better resources now, while they may cost more money, I think that's something that these guys need to take into consideration as they develop their career from the start.
Yeah, I meant to ask you this the other week. Cormier, he cut down from light heavyweight, or he cut down from heavyweight to light heavyweight. It's just, I really think that the guy just doesn't have his diet in check at all. To me, he does not look like a light heavyweight or even a heavyweight. Body size wise, I believe, naturally, if he was in shape, I know he's in shape cardiovascularly, but in shape in terms of body composition, do you feel that he could make a weight class lower than light heavyweight?
From what I've seen, no. Everyone I've ever heard that has met him, they talk about how big he is, and he's like a real thickly built guy, like not necessarily tall, but he's very wide. Like he makes me think of like maybe some football players who are shorter but very just like muscularly thick guys. And some of them walk around, they may be like 5'9", 5'10". They may weigh over 200 pounds as well too, but they're like really stacked muscle. Dan definitely does look soft at times. He kind of reminds me of Rashad Evans when he was on the Ultimate Fighter, when he was fighting at heavyweight before he cut down to light heavyweight as well too. And it's not that maybe he's just one of those guys that will never be ripped with a six pack. Everyone can't look like Tyron Woodley as much as we would like to. Everyone can't look like that guy. So maybe he's just one of those guys who is in shape and is a little bit heavier. It looks a little bit heavier than most, but he's actually doing what he needs to do to get down to the right weight class.
I just see, the cut from light heavyweight, from heavyweight to light heavyweight. To me, I can see your point that he's a very dense dude, but man, he shouldn't be struggling. At 5'9", you shouldn't struggle to cut down to 205. If your diet's in check year round, you're going to be walking around, 215 tops. If you're a 5'9" guy who works out 3 times a day and you eat healthy year round, there's no way you're getting above 220 pounds.
That may be true. Everyone's body type is quite different, so you never know what we may be seeing. It's like Charles Oliveira, who's 5'11", fighting at 145. You can't, it's really different depending on each individual's body type as to what weight class they can possibly make.
That's true. That's true.
So let's keep on going from there. We're going to look at the preliminary fights today. What stood out most for you in watching the prelims? There's a couple of different stories I think kind of stood out to me at least. What kind of caught your attention first?
Patrick Cummins against Roger Nevarez. That really stood out to me because I know Patrick Cummins got absolutely flattened by Daniel Cormier, but a lot of people still expected him to look good in his real octagon debut. Um, he didn't look too good, man. I don't know if his opponent was great, because I haven't watched his opponent fight before, so I'm not sure on his level. But from what I could see from Cummins, he just didn't look very impressive. I expected his wrestling to be a lot more dominant against a 6-0 MMA guy, but he struggled at times with single leg. I really expected great things from him, but maybe he was just too green. Maybe he just hasn't had them at the time in the cage he needs to be at 11 for the UFC.
I was watching this fight last night, and it made me think of like a wrestler's first MMA bout. It made me think of someone like a Bubba Jenkins, for example, someone who is a very good athlete, a great wrestler, but had to kind of rely on that skill set slowly to win, or solely to win their first fight. I feel the same way about Patrick Cummins here. I'm not gonna blow the whistle on him too early and say that he was too green and he's not ready yet, but he definitely has a lot of growth to go through. I see, he's someone that can kind of grow slowly in the sport and just kind of come along at his own rate. I'm not gonna write him off quite yet, but the UFC definitely needs to take a slow approach with him, and that's something actually I want to touch on now, because they got to stop pushing fighters the same way they did someone like Eric Silva. Instead, they just need to take the slow approach and build these guys up well. They did the same thing with Sergio Pettis when they fed him to Bruce Leroy a couple months back, and I just think that fight was too much, too soon for him. He's only 20 years old, and he's still growing as a man, let alone as a fighter. So he's someone else that they definitely need to kind of slowly embrace back into the sport. Give him developing fights. I understand he still has that last name Pettis, and everyone wants to see him do everything that his brother did, or is doing at this current time. But if the UFC wants to preserve these fighters and make them into household names, then they need to do a better job of slowly growing these guys. And I think that they're going to do that correctly with Sergio and Patrick Cummins.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Sergio Pettis. The problem with Patrick Cummins is his age. Pettis is only 20. Patrick Cummins is in his 30s. Um, it's almost. I think he got. I think he competed in wrestling. His last year in wrestling was 2004. In college was 2004. So it's just like maybe he's just came to MMA a little bit too late. I know he struggled for years to get fights, and he had his legal troubles as well. But it's just, to me, as if I can't see him being anything great at this point in his career, especially given his age. I think that maybe he was overhyped prior to the Cormier fight, and it's kind of being shown now.
I don't think he was overhyped. I just felt like that fight put a huge spotlight on him. But I'm definitely interested in seeing what he does going forward. I just think again, I feel like there's something that they need to grow these guys very slowly in the sport. They have all of these shows that they're doing every year or throughout the year. So instead of just throwing the guys into the thick of the fire to try to make contenders and stars out of them now, they should definitely take a little bit of a slower approach and getting these guys fights that matter to the career and help them grow from start one. You said Patrick Cummings stood out most to you again. Sergio Pettis kind of caught my attention last night. I was glad, I was happy to see Scott Jorgensen pull one out last night. If I thought he was going to go down to Danny Martinez, especially the way he was rocked early in that fight, but to see him dig deep and kind of pull out a much needed victory last night was something that caught my eye as well. And what are your thoughts on Brian Caraway? He got another win at 135 last night. Is he someone that can eventually become a title challenger to you?
Brian Caraway's an interesting one. He has talent. He's got pretty obvious talent, but that division at the minute, there's a lot of good guys. I won't be opposed to seeing him maybe fight a John Dodson if John Dodson moved up, just to test where John Dodson stands at that weight class. But for me, Caraway will always be remembered for his fight with Brandao on Tough, where Brandao bet him pretty handedly. Caraway, his main problem is he doesn't fight quite enough for me. There's usually a long gap between his fights. He was over a year between this fight and the last fight. He went a year pretty much between his fight with Mitch Gagnon and Takei Mizugaki. So if he got maybe more consistent fight-wise, it'd be interesting to see how he gets along.
I'm looking forward to seeing what he does in the future as well too. He looked good last night, but you're right. He does not fight enough. I'm not sure if it's injuries that's keeping him out or something else is kind of making him slowly decide when to take fights. I know he works a lot, works well with Misha Tate. She fights more often than him, so maybe he's kind of more focused on her career than he is his own. But he's someone I definitely want to keep an eye on, especially seeing how he's no longer a part of Team Alpha Male. That kind of creates an opportunity for them to build those fights and kind of build that rivalry there if they so choose, even if everybody doesn't like training against former teammates. So that's something that can grow in that direction as well too. So overall, what did you think of UFC Fight Night last night? I saw some people complaining about the fight card as a whole that it didn't deliver. I saw some people that enjoyed it. What were your thoughts when the show closed and Vincent Henderson was done getting his hand raised?
I think it was a pretty good event. With the oversaturation of the market, it's going to be expected that every event isn't going to be amazing. This event certainly had some great moments. Certainly had some bad moments too. But the overriding thing with me was that it was a quality event. Some quality fighters appearing and a good performance from Benson Henderson, and that's more than we can expect for the overstacked schedule we have at the minute.
Since you brought up the term oversaturation and you used the term overstacked schedule, we're gonna use that to turn the page to Bellator 121 from Friday night. Um, Now, I for one didn't watch this card. It wasn't because I had other plans to begin with, but I try to catch as much MMA as I possibly can. But nothing about this card interests me from start to finish, and that's unfortunate for the guys who fought their heart out and guys who trained to get ready to compete. But nothing really interests me about this card from top to bottom. So if these are the guys who, Bellator is putting in front of us, what do we expect from them? Like there was nothing, there wasn't any value at all on this whole card, and I think the results show that.
Yeah, man, it was so bad. Bjorn Rebney said a year or so ago that Bellator wasn't going to be an organization that bought UFC guys who've been cut, but they don't buy UFC guys. They don't get UFC guys who've been recently cut. They go for guys who've been cut years ago and are no longer relevant. So could you, man? That guy hasn't been relevant since he fought in Pride. He fought and he was awful. He looked slow. He looked laboured. There was nothing great. He got the finish, but man, it was so bad. And then we had a Pride vet, James Thompson, fighting Eric Prindle in a heavyweight fight that made me want to never watch a heavyweight fight again. Eric Prindle was awful, man. The minute he fell onto his back, Thompson just stayed on top of him and hit him ground and pound. But Eric Prindle offered no sort of ground game, no guard, no escapes. He just literally turtled up and let James Thompson punch him. Didn't even look like a fight. It looked like if you were out on the town of Saturday night and you see two fat guys punching each other. There's no difference. There was no discernible skill between either of those two guys, and it was really embarrassing to watch on a national scale as an MMA fan.
What would you suggest to the promotion then if the card was that bad and these are the guys that they kind of have to reach down and promote? What are you suggesting?
Well, I think Bellator bit himself in the ass, man. Before they had the whole debacle with Eddie Alvarez, they were signing some good young fighters. A lot of good young fighters would go to sign with them. But since it's been so publicized the way they treated Eddie Alvarez and the way they treated Cosmo Alexander, so many clubs and MMA fight teams do not want to give their young talents to Bellator. They don't want the guys to sign contracts with Bellator because they know how hard it is to get out of a Bellator contract. This alone has made Bellator have to go for veterans, and old guys who've never made it. The fact that Eric Prindle is still fighting for the organization is a joke. The fact that Sokoudjou is fighting for the organization is a joke. Sokoudjou was bet twice in a row by two bums over in Poland, man. Eric Prindle, in his last 7 fights, he's only won 1, and he's fighting main card Bellator against James Thompson. It's just crazy.
What? It's funny because I listen to Sherdog and Bjorn Remy normally comes on their show every Monday, and listening to him trying to explain this fight last Monday was almost sad in a sense because there's almost no reason why this fight should have been made and made one of the main attractions for Friday night. I'm wondering what's going to happen with that group. There were the rumors of trying to get Bjorn out of that position that Viacom didn't like him there, and while nothing's been said or moved on at this point in time, you got to wonder with fight cards like this put together, what exactly is their end game? What are they doing? Because it didn't look good at all from start to finish. So, like I'm just not. I'm not gonna say I'm not interested in what they're doing, but I only check them out for like big fights. If it's involving names like Pat Curran, Eddie Alvarez, Douglas Lima, guys who draw attention at that in that promotion. And right now they really haven't put together any type of cards that kind of catch my eye right now. So I'm watching them sparingly. If I'm home, I'll catch it. But other than that, I'm not really too concerned about what's going on in the cage. I still think they have interesting stories going on from a news standpoint, but I will not lie, I'm not too excited when I see a new Bellator tour card announced.
Yeah, man. It's just really bad. There's so much wrong with the promotion. If I could have one MMA related wish, I wish the Bellator would be defunct. So all the quality fighters that do fight for the organization, the handful of quality fighters that do fight for the organization, I might add, would be put to the UFC. Because the UFC gets a bad rep a lot of the time. A lot of people give out about UFC shows, but I can guarantee you, UFC haven't put on a show as bad as last night since like the early '90s. So I really don't like the Bellator business model, and I don't like how they treat fighters and fans alike. So I don't really see where they're going to go forward. Maybe they need to get rid of the weekly shows and go to maybe once a month, twice a month tops. But the whole weekly shows isn't working for them.
We shall see what happens with that group down the line. There's going to be plenty of time for things to change, so we'll definitely see what happens. Let's continue talking about some of the biggest stories going on in MMA this week, and perhaps the biggest story, although not the most surprising, was that Vitor Belfort failed his drug test, which is why he was pulled off of that card for facing Chris Weidman. Now, when I saw the headline, I laughed because I wasn't surprised at all. Everyone should have anticipated this because it's well known that he's using CRT therapy. So what's next? I didn't see if they're going to suspend him at all or anything like that. But what's next for this guy? Like, can the UFC really use him? Can they market him? Can they promote him? Because if it's so well known, that he has used PEDs in the past, this is his second failed drug test. Can he get licensed anywhere outside of Brazil or other foreign countries? And is he worth marketing as a fighter? Because if I was Chris Weidman, I wouldn't offer to fight him anywhere other than Vegas or somewhere else where it's like stringent drug testing policies. Outside of that, I would want nothing to do with him as a fighter. So what do you think is next for Vitor, and like how badly does this failed drug test hurt him?
Yeah, man, Vitor got very lucky. Vitor was lucky that the fact that he wasn't licensed at the time that he tested positive. He was tested randomly. He wasn't licensed at that point, so now he can reapply for license without a hefty suspension. It's just kind of bizarre, Vanderlei Silva is being scrapped from the card because he didn't take a drugs test. He's being replaced by a guy who failed his drugs test. It makes no sense to me. On a marketing front, Vitor Belfort's so fun to watch. It's hard not to want to watch the guy, so I think the UFC are going to keep marketing him heavily. On a fighter standpoint, I agree Chris Weidman should only fight him in Vegas or even New Jersey, where it's going to be commissioned heavily.
What do you think about Vitor being added to fight Chael Sonnen? Does that make that fight more enticing for you? Does it make it more interesting? To me personally, I think this is, I don't want to say a bad fight for Chael, but definitely a much, much, much tougher fight for him. Now, I feel like he has a chance to beat Wanderlei, but now, I think he's going to be added to the list of guys who were steamrolled by Vitor. If either fighter wins, do you think one of them becomes a number one contender?
The first thing I want to say is that I don't think there's any guy in MMA who has bigger balls than Chael Sonnen. He goes from fighting Wanderlei, who hasn't performed to his best in years, to fighting Vitor Belfort, who is essentially a far more skilled version of Wanderlei Silva. On short notice, he's going in against Vitor, who's faster, better wrestler, better jiu-jitsu, and everything than Wanderlei. But Chael still accepted the fight. How do I see the fight going? I see Vitor probably getting the knockout. Vitor's so good. But obviously, I think win or win, Vitor will get a title shot because he'll have beaten Chael Sonnen on the biggest show of the year. So I think he will have to get the title shot. But yeah, I don't know. It's a weird one.
Yeah, man. I was actually Adam and Michael were tweeting back and forth about that. I don't think Chael deserves any extra praise for this because he's doing his job. He's showing up to fight, and I guarantee you he's being paid handsomely for taking this fight against a much tougher opponent in Vitor Belfort. I don't think he's the type of person that should be praised for doing what he's been doing. It's not like he hasn't been training. It's not like he hasn't been getting ready to compete. He's still going to be doing what he's doing. Yes, he is facing a tougher challenge, and yes, he is putting himself in a position to go from winning a fight to suffering another knockout loss. But I don't think that deserves any step up awards or anything like that. Chael's the biggest company man that the UFC has on roster, and he's going to benefit from this just as much as anyone else.
Yeah, man. Chael recently has gained a lot of respect from me. I read a story where he said that he got lucky against Shogun Rua. He said he got lucky against Shogun. That if he fought Shogun 10 times, that outcome wouldn't happen again. Shogun was a great fighter. But how many guys do you hear after the fact saying something like that? I think Chael has just shown in recent years that how good of a person he is, and he's good at marketing himself, and he's good at marketing the sport, and he's a great company man. But I think even as a person in the interviews he's done where he doesn't act like a character, he's actually a very interesting person.
I mean, yes, he is a very, very, very intelligent businessman when it comes on how to handle yourself as a professional athlete. If I ran like a management firm that worked with athletes or anything like that, I would definitely pay Chael Sonnen to come in and talk to those guys about how to market themselves and how to create better opportunities for themselves because he's done it in such a way that no other MMA athlete has been able to really consistently up until this point, especially if you look at the fact that he's never been a champion. He's challenged for a couple belts before, and he's never really been that go-to guy, but he still has created opportunities for himself that shouldn't necessarily be there. He's definitely earned that position. It's still just some other things that I just don't necessarily like about him not necessarily like about him, just some things that kind of have touched me the wrong way, like where he said that John Jones should show some respect and fight Alexander Gustafsson next. That I didn't like how that comment sound when it came out, when he said it a couple weeks back. I didn't like that whole situation with John Jones. Didn't like to begin with. He definitely has had his run-ins with the law in the past. He's failed drug tests in the past, and I feel like that stuff is kind of overlooked now for the fact that fans love him so much. I get it, I understand it, but it's just something that hasn't always rubbed me the right way as someone who enjoys sports on a higher level, and I see other athletes not getting treated the same way. So yeah, I'm definitely on board with you to say that he's done a lot for the sport. He's really turned his career around, and if other athletes like Conor McGregor, for example, Conor McGregor is taking a page right out of Chael Sonnen's book, and if he continues winning, he's going to basically recreate the wheel. So he does have value in the sport. He's definitely someone that a lot of people can learn from, but I just don't think he's the martyr that he's always being made out to be.
Yeah, man. You brought up an interesting point against McGregor. Being from Ireland, the UFC show in Dublin went on sale. The tickets went on sale this week, and it sold out in record time in a matter of minutes. I've seen a lot of people giving out about the lack of ticket availability for UFC events. Because literally the minute the tickets went on sale, they were sold out. A lot of fighters didn't get tickets. Even some UFC veterans that came out of Ireland couldn't get tickets because the general public demand for Conor McGregor was so crazy. There's tickets bought from all over the world. just to see this guy fight, and that's down to his marketing ability. Because skills-wise, he's probably not where his mouth is yet. He doesn't fight as good as he talks. Um, but I think it's crazy how well he's marketed himself, and he's obviously modeled himself on Chael Sovens' persona. Um, with McGregor himself, I feel honestly if he beats Diego Brandao, he's probably going to fight Dustin Poirier. If he beats Dustin Poirier, I think he'll get a title shot. Just as simple as that. Just purely based on how well he talks.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. He's trying to call for a title shot after the fight with Brandao, and I don't think that that's correct. He shouldn't be able to leapfrog so many guys in one fell swoop. But yeah, if he wins 2 more bouts, I wouldn't be surprised if Dana White's talking about him getting a title shot. He's money, and that's exactly what these fighters need to be doing as a whole to improve their career and improve their opportunities within the sport.
Yeah, that's true.
That let's move on to another topic that I briefly touched upon when it comes to Alexander Gustafsson and John Jones. What are your thoughts on that development? Now they've announced the fight as I believe September 28th or September 27th, but Jones was holding out. It was never revealed as why he was holding out to sign the new deal, to sign the fight agreement. But the big controversy came out when he was talking to the fans about wanting to fight Daniel Cormier instead of Alexander Gustafsson, and fans were claiming he was ducking Alexander. But me personally, I think that the Cormier fight may have been a tougher fight in my opinion. But what are your thoughts on that whole situation there? Do you think this is just another John Jones being John Jones situation where he is painted in the wrong light and is not getting the same type of treatment as other fighters, or is he really making a mistake here and not behaving the way he should as champion?
Man, John Jones is probably one of the toughest people. Well, he is one of the toughest people on the planet. Why would he duck anyone? The fact that fans think that John Jones, a professional fighter who's a world champion, is afraid to fight someone that he's already beaten is stupid. John Jones is a businessman as well as a fighter. He's all about making that money, and he obviously believed that a fight with Cormier would make him more money than a fight with Gustafsson. He's probably wrong in that fact, but he has every right to hold out and pick and choose who he fights. The fans, fans don't get so picky when Floyd Mayweather chooses who he fights. John Jones is the Floyd Mayweather of MMA. That guy has a right to choose who he fights. I think it's good that he did what he did, and he needs to do it. And more fighters need to stand up and get the money they deserve to fight who they want to fight.
I actually thought you and I were going to see, we weren't going to see eye to eye on the situation, but I agree wholeheartedly. I think that again he has the right to decide who he's going to fight and win, especially when like the money is on his terms. There was that story came out a couple months back about him feeling like he wasn't being as well promoted as such fighters like Ronda Rousey or others. And I think there are a lot of different factors that play into the reason why John Jones is unliked. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I think part of it plays because he is an African American athlete, and they always have to deal with more controversy when it comes to the fans' perception of them. But and there are some ways where that he doesn't help himself as a fighter. I personally think that I don't want to say he needs to embrace the Floyd Mayweather mentality, but I think he definitely needs to stop going out of his way to be so fan friendly and making sure that people like him in a sense. As long as he keeps winning, he's going to be able to do whatever he wants. He's a star in the sport, and if he beats Alexander and then beats Daniel Cormier as well, there really isn't going to be anything that anyone can say to him. He's at the top of his game, and I look forward to this fight in September. I look forward to seeing what's next in his career. I mean, he's only 26 years old, so if he has it his way, he can keep doing this for a very long time. He can stay at the top for a very long time as well. So again, like I said, I don't disagree with anything that he's done over the past few months, and I would just wish more fighters would stand up for themselves in the same way.
Yeah, I'm going to say something a little bit controversial, and it's a generalization, but I think for the most part, casual MMA fans are dumb. These guys who watch events rarely, but are the first people on Twitter to harass people, bully people, tweet mean things to people for no good reason. These guys are the guys that are picking on John Jones for wanting to choose who he fights. These are the same guys that are going to alienate fighters. They're going to alienate Ronda Rousey till she leaves the UFC and goes on to better things in the acting world. The same thing's going to happen with John Jones. And these guys are going to be the same guys that are wishing that John Jones and Ronda Rousey were still fighting, you know? Uh, it's a bit off topic, but when Ronda Rousey fought Miesha Tate and the fans booed her after she won, you know, and they boo her whenever she fights. Do you really think like she's probably the most marketable person in MMA at the minute? And they're kind of hindering the growth of MMA by showing such disdain and disrespect toward her, and they're doing the same thing to John Jones. And eventually, these guys, these highly skilled athletes who are marketable enough now, are going to leave the sport, and the fans are going to be the big losers.
What makes it so easy to see that they'll leave the sport, at least in my opinion, is the fact that I feel like Dana White is one of those fans. Not necessarily one of those fans, but he he definitely supports those guys who does what he tells them to do. And when people don't necessarily buck at his every whim, that's when the issues start showing up. So, this situation here with John Jones, I don't think it's over. It started last year. Was it last year? Or started the year before last with UFC 151 when Jones refused to fight Chael Sonnen on a couple weeks' notice. It started then, and it's going to continue to escalate, especially if Jones continues winning and then decides to do other projects like movies or other things that kind of hinder his fighting on the UFC schedule. So this isn't the end of it. This isn't the beginning either. So it's something worth watching, and I just hope that John Jones always does what's best for him first, rather than putting the organization above his career.
This has happened before, man. It happened with GSP. Fans gave the guy nothing but shit. Called him boring. Called him, unfan friendly. Said he was ducking guys. And now the GSP is gone. Everyone wants GSP back. It's a cycle that's gonna keep on coming. Uh, I understand what you say too about Dana White being a factor in this. That his philosophy kind of echoes a lot of how the fans feel, and the fans are the same sort of person as Dana. People that don't appreciate fighters' worth and don't appreciate the more intricate matters of business. But I think there needs to be a lot more gained from fighters. I think perhaps the fighters union could benefit the fighters. Because right now I see a day coming when John Jones' contract runs out. He could sign a multi-million dollar deal with Showtime or Viacom and pick and choose his fights like Floyd Mayweather does. That's not too beyond the realm of possibility right now. If he's not getting the money he wants, if Showtime came in and said, "Hey, John Jones, do you want $20 million a fight?" Where's he going to go? He's going to go to Showtime, even though he'll be fighting bums. But if TV networks come in with this sort of money and start picking off the stars of the UFC when their contracts are out, it could easily happen.
It definitely could happen, and I'm looking forward to that time. If they do decide to reinvest back into MMA. Actually, you brought up that opportunity there. Did you see the story about Invicta FC signing a deal with UFC to be featured on their Fight Pass? I think that's definitely a great move for them. It's a big move for women's MMA as well. What do you see coming from that situation there? Is this something that's going to lead to Cyborg finally fighting in in the octagon, or do they still have some hurdles to jump there?
I think Cyborg will fight in the octagon eventually. I think the Fight Pass deal was amazing for Invicta. I think Fight Pass should look toward doing that. I think the Fight Pass should be around for combat sports of all types. I'd love to see guys like old school boxing matches on Fight Pass. I'd love to see the UFC buy rights to BJJ tournaments and have everything homed on Fight Pass. I'd love to see Fight Pass be an all-encompassing place for combat sports fans to watch, and a real Netflix of fighting world. I think the UFC should look toward doing that.
I'm just, I'm. This would probably make me want to kind of catch up to some Invicta events, some of the bigger events that they have, because they have some women that I do enjoy watching fight. I feel like it may be a little bit too late, not too late, but the fact that a lot of their big name women have already left for this upcoming season of Tough, so it'd be hard for them to kind of push any of the names that they have now, because I feel like they may have a bare cupboard, for lack of a better term. So, but it is a definite move in the right direction for Shannon Knapp and co. So they have something to grow with. They definitely have a bigger platform to promote their show. They may, I'm not sure, I wonder if this will kind of help with any technical difficulty issues that they may have had in the past as well too. If they will have the UFC infrastructure to help out with that there, and of course, this is going to help with their promotion of their fight. So it's something that is worth watching, and it's definitely a development worth enjoying going forward.
Yeah, I think that it probably means that the UFC probably have a stake in Invicta now, or if they don't have a stake, they also have very close ties. I pretty much see Invicta becoming like a new WEC for the women's divisions. I reckon that the weight classes that the UFC doesn't currently have will all take place in Invicta, and eventually it'll be merged as one. Um, in terms of talent, who does Invicta really have right now? You're right with that. Cyborg, maybe Marlos Kunin as well as there. But other than that, there's not too many great fighters, especially with the likes of Joe Calderwood going toward tough, and all the 115 fighters going to tough. There's not a lot of actually uh, great fighters in the women's divisions, bar the girls that have already left.
So let me talk to you about one other sporting event that went down this weekend. Did you see any of the Sergio Martinez and Miguel Cotto fight this weekend?
I missed the boxing, unfortunately, man.
It was man, it was basically a beatdown as Cotto got the stoppage in the 10th round, I believe it was. He was knocking Martinez down left and right. It was more of a showcase for Miguel Cotto. Some people are saying that he's trying to get in on another Floyd Mayweather fight, which is something I would definitely like to see because I feel like he gave Mayweather the most trouble over his last few fights. So that was something worth noting as well. A lot of people enjoyed that contest. So I just want to pay respect to that fight that was put out there. So coming up this week on MMAratings.net, what are some of the things that you're working on to go up on the website?
Yeah, I'm still toying with the idea of doing the Bellator piece. My problem is when I write about Bellator, it's all negative, and I don't want to be perceived as someone who purposely picks out faults with Bellator's business model, because people think I'm a hack writing pro UFC stories. But in my mind, I'm playing around with some ideas regarding Bellator. What about you?
I'm going to definitely have out the fights to make peace probably later on tonight to be promoted tomorrow. It's just been a very busy week, so I'm going to have to kind of recap and look and see what I have coming up. I just did an interview with Danny Cachon, who is a Washington, D.C. based athlete. I'm trying to get that posted up. There were some technical difficulty issues with the post. I believe we can still use it. And just continue looking to see what's going on within MMA. We have a big fight weekend coming up this weekend with Demetrius Johnson and Ali Bargatinov, like I mentioned, and there's a lot going on there. So there were bound to be some pieces coming out about that this week. There's just so much that I got to catch up on before actually thinking about what I'm writing.
Yeah, I look forward to it, man.
Good. So with that said, always be sure to check out MMAratings.net to see what the latest pieces are we're working on, and also to voice your feelings on the fights. You can rate which fights you liked the most, which ones you didn't like, and what fights you have which fights that are coming up that you're looking forward to the most. So go again, it's MMAratings.net. You can find us there, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It's all over the place. So be sure to check us out for your opportunity to rank the fights and tell the world how you really feel. And again, this is Raphael Garcia, and this is Roy Billington. We will be back next week to continue talking about the sport of mixed martial arts. Have a great weekend, everyone.